Hey everyone, welcome to the fourth session of the Racers HQ live on the Facebook page. Really exciting stuff. I love helping people out. I love spending my Wednesday evenings doing this. I'll tell you, this is like one of the funnest things I get to do, and I find myself looking forward to it every week. And I've got a whole bunch of stuff I want to talk to you about here today, so thanks for coming on. And there's Paul Sexton. That was fast. Hey my man, Paul, how are you? Glad to see you. Paul's one of my sponsored drivers. I talk about him all the time. Of course, you know him by now. Alright, cool. So I have a lot to talk about today, and I think we're going to go something like this. I was talking to somebody earlier this week who was saying that they're kind of facing some anxiety in the car, and they want to know how they can kind of deal with that, how to calm themselves down. We're going to talk about that. That's a really cool topic. And we're also going to talk about how to be most productive in iRacing. There's Paul Sexton. The Prius guy is here. There he is. Jason Hyde. So glad that you joined on this session. I have something that I want to talk about with you specifically tonight, Jason. So pleased to see you here. And I'm looking forward to getting to that question a little bit later. We'll get to it. We're going to talk about how to use iRacing most efficiently. Oh man, Rick Staley. Yeah, man, you can always count on Rick Staley to stop in and say hello. Good to see you there, Rick. Looking forward. Hey, there's Calvin. Calvin's watching there as well. Pleased to have you along, Calvin. I'm doing fine. Thanks for asking. Hope you're having a great day there, Calvin. There it is. Paul Sexton jumping in again. There he goes. And let me see. So, yes, we're going to talk about how to use iRacing most efficiently. I recently had Glenn McGee on the podcast. That was really informative. We're going to talk about that. And lastly, I think we're going to get to Jason's question last. I actually put it in here last because I wanted to make sure that he was going to sign on because we've been talking this week. And he wants to talk about, or asked a question earlier about, if it's beneficial to race with an organization other than the SCCA, and we're going to get into some progressive ladder stuff, which would be pretty cool. So, and we're going to go from there. So let's jump right into it. Thanks for joining me. So excited to be doing this again on Wednesday night. All right, so here we go. I was talking to Marty Davis. Marty, if you're on, I want you to say hi so I can shout you out. But I was talking to Marty Davis earlier this week, and he was saying that he's kind of facing some adversity in the kart, and he's getting anxious and nervous. And he asked me about the mental side of racing. He says specifically something you can do to calm yourself in the car. Kevin Stevens, Monte Carlo, my man. Nice to see you, Kevin. I haven't heard from you in a while. Hope everything's going really good there. Shoot me an email. Tell me how you're doing. Hope you still got the Civic. That's pretty cool. All right. I got so many people on here. I love talking to people too. I got to try and reel it back in here. All right. So anxiety in the car. Really interesting topic. I think this happens to pretty much everybody. I mean, it definitely happened to me. It still happens to me sometimes. It happened to me like before you go racing, before you jump in the car to do a film thing. I used to do pro stunt driving in film and television. I got a lot of cool stories if you didn't know that. It's pretty fun stuff. But the big problem here is that, like a lot of things in pretty much any topic, I think Marty's looking for a solution to the wrong thing. I think he's looking for a solution to calming himself down in the car. And there's Marty Davis. Cool, man. We're talking about you right now. I'm glad you signed on. So I think that we need to be looking at a solution that's a little more preemptive than waiting until you get anxious or nervous and then trying to fix it from there. So here's what I think the problem is. We need to fix the root of the problem, and I think that there are two separate problems here. I think there are two main reasons that people tend to start getting nervous and anxious, and one of them is that hang on, I'm reading Kevin Stevens, that was a long post. STF, Prep Civic Hatch, we'll have to talk later, that's cool. There are two things that really trip somebody up, like when you're waiting in grid, you're ready to go, you got the butterflies, whatever. One of them, and I guess to lead off, I have to say, your mind is doing things that you don't realize. Like, your mind is always working in the background and is processing information when you aren't even realizing it. So if you're off doing something else, it's very common for people to come up with solutions to problems they're not actively thinking about at the time. It's because your mind is in the background doing something else, helping you out. And this is what's happening. Your subconscious mind either is trying to deal with either one of two problems. The first problem is that you truly don't think the car is good enough to beat the cars that are around you, okay? And I think a big problem with that is that a lot of people don't stop and and think about racing the right way. A lot of people want to jump right in and they want to start racing other people, racing other cars. Well, that's not how it starts. To be competitive right out of the gate, you have to be racing the rule book. And if you're not doing that, you're probably leaving something on the table for sure. And that's why you see people in forums all the time. One of the most common things you see in forum is, hey, I got this car, I did this to it, what class am I in? It's because people won't sit down and read the technical pages that will actually let them be successful. Every club has a rule book that states you're allowed to do this, 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 and this. And if you're only doing one of those things, you're not going to be competitive. If you've only done 4 of the things in a class where you have to do 12 to be competitive, you're not going to be competitive there either. So you've got to start racing the rule book. Incidentally, I'm going to tell you everything right now about everything you need to know about using forums. I made some notes here. Let me just find it somewhere here. Here it is. Everything you need to know about forums. Don't use forums. The problem with forums is that it's full of a bunch of well-intentioned people who often have no idea what they're talking about. You know, and it's complicated because everyone with a keyboard can become an expert very quickly, so you need to be careful where you're getting your tuning information from. Doesn't make sense to ask somebody who may or may not know what they're talking about when you can go right to the rule book and say, okay, I can do this, this, and this. Now I've done everything I can possibly do to the car. And that's extremely important because, like I said, your subconscious mind knows when there is something that you haven't done. That's where anxiety comes from, is where you have not done enough prep work. You haven't done enough, haven't put in enough effort to know everything there is to know, do everything there that you can possibly do to prep for whatever's happening. If you've done everything you can do and you're sitting in that moment, I promise you, you will be in the zone. You won't be nervous. You won't have any anxiety because you're in the back of your mind is not spinning through all the stuff that you should have been doing. Paul Sexton agrees. Right on, my man. I hear you. So that's number one. So, and I'm just going to recap real quick. So the first what am I trying to say? It's the source of anxiety is that your subconscious mind knows that you didn't do enough to prep the car. You don't understand how the rules work. You don't know that you could be getting a bigger advantage just by reading a technical manual. You need to be doing that. It's very important. The second reason that I think people get a lot of anxiety is that they don't believe that they're good enough as a driver. Right? And this problem stems from exactly the same type of thing. It's because you haven't done enough prep work. You know, and I talked about this, I think a couple of videos ago. I've mentioned it several times in the past couple of years. There is a very specific process that you have to go through to be good at anything, to generate and cultivate a huge amount of talent in one specific skill, whatever it is. And it goes like this, okay? It goes theory, knowledge, implementation, and mastery. That's how you build mastery. The problem is that most people want to just jump in to the third stage, which is implementation. That's the doing part. Doing stuff's really fun. We want to go to the track, we want to get in the car, we want to go fast, right? That's what we love doing the most, okay? But there's a very specific reason that, you know, drivers with 10 or 15 years of experience are still finishing mid-pack, you know? It doesn't make sense for all those people out there saying, the solution is more seat time. I need to get in the seat more. I need more experience. Well, seat time is not the same as experience. That's why someone with 15 years is often slower than a lot of the new guys, okay? You have to start at the beginning, right? So you have to start with theory. If I can't call you on the phone and instantly get you to explain to me, off the top of my head, how two drivers can go into a braking zone and end up braking the exact same amount of force, but one of them is controlling the balance of the car better so they have more grip going into the corner and they'll be able to carry more speed through that corner and onto the following straightaway, okay? That's all theory and knowledge. That's all weight transfer manipulation. We're going to talk about that again in a little bit too. If you can't tell me how two drivers can have the same average corner speed through a corner, but one of them comes out going faster all the way down through the end of the straight, that, man, you're leaving a lot of stuff on the table too. Really basic stuff that drivers should really be thinking about. And if your subconscious mind is processing in the background saying, wow, I really did not do enough prep work for this, yeah, you're going to be anxious because in the back of your head, you definitely know that there was a lot more that you could have done. So if you want to alleviate anxiety in the car, Marty, or anyone else who's experiencing this, I think you're focusing on the wrong thing. You need to stop focusing on how can I calm myself down once I start feeling anxious? And you start focusing on eliminating the source of that anxiety. Man, I'll tell you what, people that go to the doctor, all they want is antibiotics. My best friend, she's a PA, so she's all the time. We were just talking about this earlier today and a couple of days last week. People want quick solutions. They want antibiotics to fix the problems, but she's always trying to get them to change the source of the problem so everything goes away. And I promise you, it'll be better in the long run And I think we've pretty much crushed it. I think I pretty much crushed it on that. So, okay, if you're I know a lot of people have said hi already. If you're watching and you haven't said hi yet, just say hi in the comment field. I'd love to shout you out and introduce myself, especially if you're new. I'd like to introduce myself. So, I think we can. And for those of you who are watching, I see that there are several people on. For those of you watching right now, give me your thoughts on this. I really want to get some feedback on this because you just don't hear people talking about this stuff. And it's kind of a bummer. So shoot something into the comment field, and I'll come back to it in a minute as we get going. So, but for now, I'm just going to keep pushing through. The second thing I want to talk to you today about is iRacing. And man, I talk about iRacing all the time. I love it. I'm not an affiliate. I don't make any money when someone signs up, but man, I wish I was because I think I would do pretty well. I do a pretty good job selling it because I use it all the time, and it's one of the most valuable tools that anyone has ever had. So keep that in mind as we keep talking about iRacing. It's not video gaming, I promise. iRacing is something that Dale Earnhardt Jr. uses to get better as a racer. Travis Pastrana uses it. Juan Pablo Montoya, Brad Keselowski, insert any pro racer. They're all using iRacing because it's such an asset. But okay, so I got sidetracked again. I got to reel it back in. I got a great question from a guy named Devin Izell, I think is how you pronounce his last name. And he and I have been talking a lot in the past 2 weeks. Super ambitious. He's got a lot going on. And the thing I really like him about, he has awesome energy and he has real tangible goals that he's laid out for himself and methods which he can reach that goals. Because if you don't start at the end, and Paul Sexton says preparation is everything. Yeah, if you're sitting in grid at the start and you can say to yourself, I got this, and believe it, you totally get it. Yeah, exactly. That's where you're at. You'll definitely be in focus mode and you'll be good to go. So Devin's been talking to me a lot, and we talk about iRacing. There's Calvin. Some people may mix up excitement and anxiousness. Man, that's a really good point. I never thought of that, and that creates its own set of hurdles. We'll have to talk about that later at the end if we have time. I gotta keep pressing through to this next one. So Devin has a really great process laid out, and most people don't have tangible goals. And if you don't know where you want to end up, you can't reverse engineer the process to get there. And Devin obviously knows where he wants to go, and he's laid out all these great tactical strategies to help himself get there. He's going to do this, and he's going to do this, and he's going to do this, and he's going to do this. And I love that kind of stuff. And we talked about iRacing a lot, and we talked about it a lot, but one of the things that I really wanted to mention here was that he said, should my training time in iRacing be split in a certain way between modes in iRacing? Great question. The answer is absolutely yes. I totally believe that is true. And let me interject here. I want to interject first before we really dive into this. So I mentioned Glenn McGee was featured on episode 37 of the podcast this past Monday, and he was recruited right out of iRacing to go race in a factory Mazda seat, which no one has ever done before, no other racing experience. And I had a great time talking to him. Really, he's just a hilarious, charismatic guy. Great listen on that. But I put together a really great cheat sheet for all of you people interested in iRacing or changing your setup. I laid out everything, all the stuff that I have that I use to go iRacing, and I have a lot of bells and whistles that you don't need. So I listed out everything I have, the prices, the links to them on Amazon, a few tips here and there about how to do this and how to do that. And I also then laid out a really basic setup. The only thing you need to go iRacing, I put that in there as well, along with the price and where you can get it. I'm not an affiliate for all that stuff, but I really believe in it and I use it myself. And you can get that by just going to racershq.com/37download. Get that for free. And then of course that's from episode 37 from the Racers HQ podcast. Really cool resource. It was fun to put together. Okay, so do you split your time in certain modes in iRacing? I'm going to say absolutely yes. In fact, here's the thing. I believe truly that you should spend the first 100 hours of your iRacing career in test mode at Lime Rock Park with no one else on the track. Lime Rock Park is an incredible track. It's got everything you need to learn some really complicated stuff. Which I think is really important because most people, like I say, they want to jump right into the implementation, the doing part, and they skip past the theory and the knowledge. And you'll learn more in the first 2 hours of iRacing than you will in a whole season or two of autocross for sure, but only if you have your theory and knowledge ready to go first so that when you get into the seat, you have new things to implement. Okay, that's really important. 100 hours I think is a really good benchmark because you have to know how to pilot the car yourself. And if you can't lap Lime Rock Park consistently for like 20 laps in a row, I would say at a 59.5 for each lap, then you're not ready yet. You're definitely not ready yet. And of course, his goal isn't to be an iRacing champion, so he doesn't need to be on track with other cars. In fact, he's talking a lot about doing autocross and time trials and stuff like that. So, being on track on your own makes a lot of sense. Highly recommend doing that, especially at Lime Rock Park. So, if you're not doing something like that, I really think you should be, because it's extremely helpful. The other really important thing that I think that most people don't do with iRacing, and I've gotten this from a couple people. The first person I heard it from was Jesse Iwuji, who, thanks to Paul Sexton, who, if you don't know, is my sponsored driver and media manager / public relations manager for Racers HQ, which is really helpful and has really unloaded a lot of work for me. He actually connected me with Jesse Iwuji, who's a pro NASCAR driver. And Jesse spends a lot of time on iRacing, mostly because he never even got into a prepped race car until he was 27. That was the first car he ever got into, was a fully prepped circle track car. And so he got thrown into the fray, like swim or drown kind of thing, sink or swim. And so he learned really quickly, and iRacing helped him out a lot. And one of the things that helped him the most was he spends a lot of time dirt racing inside iRacing. Yes, it's relatively new. iRacing has released an entirely new dirt racing mode in their simulation, which is incredible. Highly recommend Eldora as well as USA International Speedway, the dirt section. Both really dynamic dirt tracks. You'll learn a lot. And here's why I recommend that. There are two main things that separate pro racing drivers from amateur drivers, and one of them is knowledge of weight transfer. And like I said earlier, if you can't explain to me those complex things about how two drivers are doing the same thing, but one of them is just going way faster in the exact same conditions, it's all weight transfer manipulation. And dirt cars allow you to really, really understand how to manipulate the car's weight transfer. Like a pro racing driver, he doesn't, and everyone is always looking ahead, they're looking at the braking mark, they're watching it. Everything's timed out and they know when to do what. And Marty Davis says, Kyle Bosch, I need you to elaborate on that. I'm not familiar with this person. Yeah, like a pro racing driver will approach the braking zone, but rather than thinking, I need to slow the car down, he starts thinking, how do I manipulate the weight in this car, the weight transfer, so that I can get the most amount of grip going into the corner? Rick Staley says, running by yourself allows you to concentrate on what you want to work on without worrying about other knuckleheads. Yes, especially at the lower levels of iRacing. There are some, I guess we could just call them people who have more learning to do. I guess we'll just say that. So running by yourself helps you learn a lot more, and you don't have to worry about all the other crazy guys until you get into a level where everyone plays really nice, really well. Where was I at? Right. So I want you to start thinking differently about race cars, especially in dirt or on a dirt surface, because rather than thinking about, okay, the brake pedal slows the car down, the steering wheel turns the car, the accelerator does things, and so does the clutch, I want you to start thinking that, okay, if I use the brake pedal, weight is going to shift a certain way. Or when I turn the car in, if I turn the car to the left rear is going to get light if I'm slowing the car down at the same time. That's how pro racing drivers think. Novices. That's the word I was looking for. I was looking for like a really nice way to say knuckleheads, but not. And now that I've said it anyway, so it's all falling apart. That's okay. All right. So weight transfer is a huge thing that separates pro racing drivers from, we'll say them, novices / more learning to be done people. I'll figure out a better way to say that later. Moving on. And dirt allows you to do that, mostly because most dirt cars have very stiff shocks, but they have a really long suspension travel. So you really get to feel weight transferring around a car because it's the springs are soft enough so that you'll get a big amount of lean when you put on the brakes. When you turn, the car leans a lot. And you'll be able to learn a lot about what is actually happening on a fundamental level. And as a side note, when I interviewed Ross Bentley a couple times several months ago, he said that when he goes to coach novice drivers, he'll talk about a certain thing, and then the next week he'll go coach a really high-level pro, and they'll talk about exactly the same thing. You'd think that there were certain tricks or advanced techniques that pro racing drivers are using, but they don't. They just have a much deeper fundamental understanding of the basics, right? And that's what racing on dirt will allow you to do. The other cool thing about dirt, I need to go back and finish what I was saying. So the first thing that separates amateurs from pros, I think, is weight transfer, knowledge of weight transfer. And the second thing is being able to rotate the car. And rotating the car is, it's just, without getting really too technical, rotating the car is a corner entry technique where you're able to just kind of get the rear end of the car to slide out just a little bit to maximize certain things that I won't elaborate on here. Okay, it's just like a very tiny drift as you're entering the corner, and that's the fastest way. And if you enter the corner faster, you can carry momentum all the way through it. And if you don't know how to do that, then you're definitely leaving speed on the table. And dirt will allow you to do that too, because to be fast in a dirt car, you have to rotate it. You have to be in a small drift through the corner, or you won't go fast. You'll either learn it or suck at it. So it's a really kind of another great sink or swim situation to put yourself in, so that you can learn how to rotate a car like a professional racing driver. Just as an example, there are 3 main ways to rotate any car, and the 3 common ones are, just turning the car in. That'll cause rotation in some situations. Another one is just simply lifting off the throttle aggressively. That can cause the car to rotate. And the other one is braking in a certain way can cause the car to rotate, and it's the fastest way to do it. So if you don't understand those things, racing on dirt is a much easier way to learn than it is on pavement in iRacing, because dirt, everything happens a little slower on dirt. The car leans more. You'll be able to feel what's happening. It's really important that you understand those things. By the way, fun fact, there are actually 7 ways to rotate a car, and you can see them you can see them all in drifting, Formula D. And drifting is just a really big rotation. That's all rotation is that little bit of, the car stepping out on the back end. So fun fact, there are 7 ways. If anyone can tell me all 7 of them, I will be very, very impressed. Email me later, matt@racershq.com. I want to see if anybody can answer that question without Googling. Think about it. It's a good brain exercise for sure. All right, so yes, there are techniques in iRacing. Spend the first 100 hours at Lime Rock Park trying to get down to a consistent 59.5. Make sure that you are also doing about a third of your time dirt racing on different places. I really like I said, Eldora and USA International Speedway. Man, we could talk about rotation all day. And actually, I want to mention this now. I have a really, really awesome resource coming out in 2 or 3 months that's going to teach you to think, drive, and win like a pro racing driver. The stuff I'm talking about weight transfer and rotation, it's really simple stuff, but it's really hard to talk about through writing or video. So I'm actually creating an amazing resource that I'm teaching certain techniques in this resource, and I'm also teaching from inside the iRacing simulator. So you'll be able to watch it as it's happening in slow motion, and you'll be able to see where the throttle is, the brake position, the steering position. It's all going to be really cool. So be on the lookout for that. I'm really excited about that. It's taking months to put together. Very cool research. Very excited to put that together for you. All right, let's move on to something else. Jason Hyde, I hope you're still here. We're about to jump into yours. Boy, I'm really sucking up the time here tonight. All right, we're going to get into this one. So I'm going to paraphrase because it's a pretty long question, but Jason Hyde basically asks, what are your thoughts on SCCA regional autocross versus an autocross club that is outside the SCCA? And I have a lot to say about that, because I think that what he's going, yep, there he is, he's here, cool, kudos. I'm glad you're here, because I really want you to get this. So we're talking about, is it worth it being outside the SCCA? And we're talking about the ladder of progression here for those of you who are a little more serious. So I have two things I want to say about this. The first one is, if you're a hobby level driver, I mean, it's not really going to matter for you, because you can go anywhere and have a ton of fun racing pretty much anywhere that you go. If you're someone who's a little more serious and has ambitions or plans to reach a higher level, maybe a national level or something like that, you're definitely going to want to leave the option open. And being outside the SCCA, that gets really complicated. I know NASA has a pretty good time trial program, but as far as autocross goes, the SCCA is definitely the premier organization for that. And everybody knows, you're going to start at the club level. Some places have divisional, which is really cool. And now nationals is more accessible than ever. Champ Tour, Match Tour, and of course the Super National. I call it Super National. That's not what it is. It's the Lincoln, Nebraska Garmin Verb National, which is the big deal in Lincoln, which they do once a year. And the cool thing about leaving the door open with something like this is that there really isn't any different type of entry requirement other than accounting for the time it takes to travel somewhere and the cost of traveling there and back. So that's no big deal. So if you have aspirations or if you're serious about it, I would highly recommend staying inside the SCCA for sure. Just because Paul Sexton says definitely be open to any option or opportunity, and that's a big one. Even if you don't end up using it, it's always going to be there. Calvin says it can be good to use outside events as a test and tune. Yes, thank you for saying that. I was going to go there, and I'm glad you brought it up, because I think I would have skipped over it. If you're in the SCCA at regional level or whatever, and you're scoring points, that definitely needs to be your primary club. But it's hard. It's really hard to test and tune in autocross because, I mean, your seat time is always race time. And that's why I created a really cool 42-page guide that you can download for free, which I mentioned it last time. It'll help you approach business owners so that you can use their commercial parking lots for private motorsport practice to do testing and tuning. I've done it a bunch of times in a bunch of places. It's a great resource, and I laid out all the steps, where you can go find businesses like this, how to approach them, all this stuff. Get that for free at racershq.com/more-seat-time. Pleased to bring you that. So yes, if you're scoring points in the SCCA club, make that your primary club. Make sure you do all your series racing there. Don't do any tuning. But if there's another outside club nearby, sure, go ahead. Doesn't matter if you win or lose there because there's no points on the line. You can use that as your test and tune. But highly recommend getting your own private practice space. It's really not that difficult. So you should definitely go check that out. It's a really good resource. It's got several hundred downloads now. It's pretty popular. It's a good resource. The other thing that I would caution you about as far as staying inside or outside the SCCA, and this is a big one, is most clubs will use the SCCA rulebook. A lot of smaller clubs will use the SCCA Autocross official rulebook because it would take forever to rewrite it, and why would you do that? But I want to caution you on a couple things. The BMW CCA and the Porsche Club of America, whatever it's called. Those are huge organizations. They do a ton of autocrossing, and there's a lot of good competition. There's a lot of great drivers, a lot of stuff to be learned for sure. But those two clubs don't use the SCCA rulebook, and that's a problem because, like we said earlier, you have to be racing the rulebook, and it doesn't make sense for you to go set up your car for one rulebook and then go to the PCA or wherever and not be competitive because they have a totally separate set of rules. And Jason Hyde says he does believe that the third-party club does use the SCCA rulebook, so that's really good for you, and that'll help you stay competitive everywhere you go. So definitely be aware of that. It doesn't make sense. Who was it who said this to me the other day? They were quoting Ross Bentley, and Ross Bentley said, I think it was, I'm not going to say who it was, I can't remember, but it's something to the effect of, you should only be racing in a class that you can dominate. So one, you have to understand the rule book, always going back to that. And two, if you have long-term aspirations, stay in the SCCA, and you'll want to probably stay away unless you're just doing it for fun or tuning the other ones who don't use it, because you'll have to retune for everything and you won't be competitive. It's kind of too bad, but I understand that there are different rules for different things. Like, I know it's very complicated to switch between the SCCA and NASA, which is too bad because they're two huge organizations, but they just do things, so totally differently. So, man, I'm just totally blowing through all the stuff. Really excited. I love doing this on Wednesday nights. Hit me with your thoughts on especially, I meant to ask after the iRacing one, the dirt one, and for those of you who let's do it this way. If you're watching this and you don't really have a good grasp on weight transfer or rotation, please let me know right now. Ask me a question about it right now, because I'm still building this other resource and I want to make sure I put in as much information as possible. So it's always really great when I can just ask people who I know will be really happy about the information. So let me know where you're at, and I can keep fine tuning this course, this resource as it's still being built and produced. And stuff like that. So, and I know I got a couple more minutes here. If there's anything else you want to ask, now's the time. Any comments you want to add, now would be the time to do that for sure. And if you don't think of something now and you do think of something later, you can just go to racershq.com/ask and submit it there. And I'd love to put it on the next show. I usually get through like 3 or 4 of these every session, because when you're opinionated about something and you're also knowledgeable about it, it's really easy to go up here and talk about anything for like 9 or 12 minutes at a time. So I tend to keep going. So Jason Hyde says, I would be classified as a novice, but I want to learn as much as possible before that implementation stage. Yeah, that's huge, and I mean that speaks volumes about your potential level of success, because if you're thinking about it like this right now, you're gonna go really far. So here's what I would recommend that you do. If you're a novice, then definitely iRacing is something you want to get into if you're not doing it now. And even maybe even before that, you'll want to. There it is. Hang on, I'll get to that in just a second, Paul. Hang on. You'll definitely want to start reading books, because books are the cheapest, best way to to learn the theory and the knowledge part. You know, like I said, if you can't explain to me why these things are happening or whatever, I mean, there's definitely still more to be learned. So I'm pleased to hear that you want to learn as much as possible for the implementation phase. So definitely do the books. Keep doing these live Q&As. Keep being here for these because, I mean, people are always asking these great questions. There's a free video series on a ton of concepts and stuff on the website, racershq.com. You can always go there. I want to just say good luck to Paul Sexton. He is going to be racing the Prius. Who is this guy? Who is this guy racing the Prius? It's Paul Sexton, yeah, and he's amazing. And like I said, he's playing a huge role in my brand. He's going to be in action in 2 weeks at the SCCA Match Tour in Bristol, Tennessee. Good luck, sir, on that. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and shut this down. Unless anyone has one last thing they want to include, we can keep going. If people have something they want clarification on, no big deal. I want to mention one more time that if you're interested in iRacing at all, I put together a great cheat sheet, feeling pretty good about it, and that'll explain what I am doing for iRacing setup, how I put everything together, who's using it, you know, the very minimal thing that you need to get going. You don't need any expensive computer. I used to run it on a super tiny little netbook, which had just enough juice to run a private practice session with just myself on relatively low graphics, but the physics are all there and it's really important. So go ahead and grab that right now at racershq.com/37. Download, pleased to bring you as much free information as possible through the Racers HQ brand. All right, I'm going to shut it down. We're going to do this again next week, 7 p.m. Eastern. I hope to see you here. I'll talk to you guys soon.